I'm going to call this step 10A. This only applies if you have an HOA in your deal here. So if you do, you're going to have this standard New Jersey addendum to the contract of sale regarding a homeowners association. So this only applies for a property that's in an HOA. That could be a condo, like a unit in a condo building. That could be a single family home in Mount Laurel that's in the neighborhood with an HOA fee. So condominium is a type of ownership. It's not necessarily referring to a style of construction. So just something to note there. So the information that you should need should be listed in here. The seller, so we have the buyer, we're talking about a buyer's guide. So the seller, the listing agent, they are responsible to make available prior to the time of settlement, the rules and regulations, the master deed, the bylaws, all that kind of stuff. To the buyer and really to the title company is going to want it. So what happens is when you go under contract, if the listing side hasn't done this already, they will request from the HOA, they will, or their processor will request these documents that are just standard for the contract of sale. That's it for the beginning. They're annoying. HOAs can be annoying because if you can imagine, you might be dealing with, just somebody that's hard to get a hold of or somebody that doesn't want to deal with your questions. If there's some type of issue where you can't get the documents or the title company needs something and the HOA can't provide it and you don't know who to call. And in this business, we know when you're dealing with a co-op agent, a lot of times you're doing their job. So it's important to note there's no yes, the seller's responsible to get this information, to provide the bylaws, the deeds, whatever to the buyer, the master deed. But as the buyer's agent and you want to get the deal to the closing table, if you need to jump in and get involved here, just consider it. It happens sometimes. So I myself have gotten in my car and driven to I can't remember the name of a couple HOAs around here, just and walked in and been like, we need this, the bylaws. We haven't been able to get in touch with anybody. The listing agent is out to lunch, so I'm here just trying to get it together. Not usually necessary. Usually the title company can help you. Or one other quick tip here. If you have an issue getting some information from an HOA, for example, just the HOA's accurate phone number, my advice to you is one thing that you can do is go into Bright and look for sold listings in the HOA nearby. And if there was a listing that sold over the past month or two, call that listing agent, call that buyer's agent and say, listen, I'm selling, a house in the same community. Can you provide me the information for the HOA? Because I can't seem to get it. So, obviously if I got that call, I'd be willing to help you if I had the information. So most agents will help you with it that way. Other than that, this is just another thing that happens along with your inspections and getting your title and financing and getting you to the closing table. Not really a huge deal. Not a huge sense of urgency for most of the things related to an HOA. The lender's going to want to see, the lender is going to want to see all of these documents. So you have to make sure that you get that stuff. And the last thing that I'll say is HOAs add closing costs for your buyer. So almost all HOAs charge what's called a capital contribution fee, which can range from a couple hundred to I've seen as much as $1,500 or $1,800, depending on the HOA, depending on their financial situation. They take that capital contribution fee. It's a one-time fee paid at settlement. It's included in the buyer's single cashier check that we're going to talk about that they're bringing to settlement, or their single wire, and the title company will pay the HOA generally for their capital contribution fee, and that $500 goes in a bucket for the HOA, and they use that for their repairs, their maintenance, their whatever they use it for. It's a necessary thing. It's very important to note this when you're doing a buyer's closing cost worksheet or when you're talking to the lender, or because they might not be expecting a $1,000 fee. For example, there's a condo I sold recently that was the HOA was actually filing for bankruptcy. So believe it or not, we still could get financing for that. But the way that they were getting out of their bankruptcy is they had a plan, and that was one of the reasons why we could get financing. They had an attorney helping them get out of bankruptcy and back onto, like current and being able to afford to make their repairs and all that kind of stuff. And they were charging $1,800 on like $70,000 condo. So it was a really expensive, but they were doing that so that they could build up their reserves and pay for these things long term and get themselves out of financial distress. So that's generally it. Watch out for the capital contribution fee. Make sure this is in the works. If nobody knows, if you did your contract and you didn't check off the box for HOA and you didn't mention it anywhere, the title company and the lender might never know that you were in an HOA, and you could be going to closing 2 days prior and be like, oh yeah, I forgot to, to get those docs, or the lender just learned that they're in an HOA a week before closing when the title commitment came in, and learned that it's in a condominium association, and now you're scrambling. So always better to get ahead of this early on. Just make sure that this is being taken care of, and you'll have a smooth closing.